Welcome to Straight Outta Health IT. Getting into health tech is rough, but here's an unfiltered dialogue of healthcare leaders and influencers covering a wide variety of issues affecting healthcare and the health tech industry. And now your host, Christopher Kunney.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Outta Health IT, the podcast where we break down things in healthcare tech, health policy, health innovation, and just life in general. I'm your host, Christopher Kunney, and today we're tackling a subject that is really often misunderstood but incredibly important, and that's the topic of palliative care, hospice care, and end-of-life care. When we hear those terms like palliative care or hospice or end of life, we often think of some similar concepts amongst these terms, specifically comforting the terminally ill. However, the services overlap, and ultimately the goal really is to improve the quality of life during the final stages of illness. However, they're distinctly different in their approach, purpose, and timing. Really understanding the differences and benefits of each of these can help families and caregivers, patients make really better informed decisions during some of the most difficult times in their life. So, my guest today is one of the foremost experts on these topics, Gil Bashe. Gil is the chair of the Global Health and Purpose for Finn Partners. Let me tell you just a little bit about Gil before I have him jump in real quick. This man has done some amazing things. He's a champion for health innovation to sustain life and improve people's care. Gil is the Finn Partners Chair for Global Health and Purpose. He's also editor-in-chief of Medica Life and host of the Healthcare Now radio show on health innovation. He is an NM Top 10 Innovation Catalyst, a Provoke Media Top 25 Creative Influencer, and a PRO Week Top 50 Health Influencer, and a PM 360 Lifetime Achievement Award and PR News All-Star recipient. He now serves on multiple boards, including the American Diabetes Association, the Marfan Foundation, Let's Win for Pediatric Cancer, the Gilead Foundation, on digital health companies, Newtopia, Stuff That Works, ViTrack Strategic, and a part of ViTrack Strategic Advisory Board. He's a former member of the American Heart Association's Founders Affiliate Chair, and he focuses on prevention and access to care. Gil's a fellow of the American College of Health Data Management and dedicates his energy to ensuring health urgencies and the advocacy communities have a voice. He is a combat veteran. Thank you for your service. Having served as a paratrooper, combat medic, and he is also an ordained clergy. Wow. Talk about a man with a very
I've earned my white beard.
Background. Exactly. Renaissance
Thank
man.
you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gil, for being a part of today's program.
No, Christopher, we've had a chance to talk about these topics before. And
yes, we have.
Often you and I spend a lot of our energies about harnessing information to sustain people's lives.
Yes.
But I've never known anyone who got out of life alive.
Right. That's a good point. Absolutely.
That would be,
we all
let me know if you're that person, of course.
That's right. And yeah, we're all destined for the same journey, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we have a final day. The Bible has a very interesting exchange between Moses and God, where Moses asked to see God's face.
Right.
And God responds, he says, look, you can't see my face or you would die.
Exactly.
And then there's an expression that's translated in different ways. God says, you can see, you can't see my face, but you can see my back.
Right.
Now, that could also be translated into you can't see the future, but you can only see the past. We can only see the second we're living in.
That's right.
If we knew when we were going to die, the day, the date, the time, most of our lives would be obsessed with the clock ticking. But
that's
the clock
right.
is ticking. The clock is ticking.
Exactly.
And so when we look at the end of life, since we don't know when it's coming, first and foremost, we have to approach each day with the energy and passion and commitment to make a difference in this world, as if this might be our last day.
And very well could be our last day as well.
And
too,
you've experienced that fear in your own life. And
yes, I have.
Obviously that's really had a huge impact on your caring and professional spirit.
I like to think so, yes.
I think so. Not something I'm gonna be a little definitive on that one, my friend. I know so. How's that? I know so.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
In looking at this, I think people sometimes look at some of the things you mentioned about me and say, okay, he's a business leader, or not. Pundits too. I welcome them, my detractors. But what you talked about, two instances in that background actually play a disproportionate role in my approach, counseling clients, to working with colleagues,
right,
to supporting industry colleagues. And that is, one, I've seen the horror of combat.
Yeah. I was going to ask you too, Gil, and just to interrupt you real quick. Yeah. Tell me your why. And maybe that's what you're about to do as well, too. One of the first things I do ask my guests to tell our listeners, or what I call our tribe, is your journey, your story. And maybe that's what you were just about to do. And why is this now important to you to talk about end of life care?
So my life was idyllic and idealistic, as many people's lives are.
Sure.
And then on June 10th, 1982, I found myself in probably one of the greatest battles the Middle East has known for about a 30-hour stretch through, being a small force surrounded by an overwhelming, by a magnitude of maybe 4 or 5 times enemy force. That surrounded us. And I was among the few combat medics that had made it into this pocket that we were surrounded in, fighting our way through. And it wasn't so much caring for my comrades that something hit me. It was actually rescuing a wounded enemy soldier.
Is that right? Interesting.
Yeah. Combat medics have a moral obligation when someone's no longer a combatant to sustain their lives.
Right.
And many things happen that moment. I think of that moment often. Obviously, some will call it PTSD, other will call it a powerful, memorable moment.
Absolutely.
But it certainly was one or the other, or both. And rescuing this wounded young person, badly wounded, who survived, I suddenly understood the power of nonverbal language. But he quickly saw that, as I knelt over him, actually dragged him out from under fire and knelt over him, that I was not doing this to hurt him. I had a very clear mission to help save his life.
Right.
And
about humanity, right? Just practicing humanity.
He's a child of God's also, by the way.
Absolutely.
He may have been my enemy moments before. He was also a creation of a higher power.
Exactly.
And we have a responsibility. Now, from that, obviously, people in these situations, and anyone who's a combat veteran listening in will probably say, yeah, he's telling the truth. Everybody bargains for their life.
Sure.
Right, in that situation. Maybe when you face medical urgency, you bargain for your life. Hey, if I make it through this, God, I promise, blah,
That's
blah,
right.
blah, blah.
Absolutely.
Whatever your promise list
exactly.
is. Mine was to do right by people.
Right.
Actually, to do right by people. And I started to realize, as I cared for more wounded, as the weeks and months progressed, often people who were badly wounded asked me if they were going to die.
Oh, really?
They asked me if they were going to die. They asked me to call their mothers. Now that I think about it, nobody asked, say, could you call my dad?
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm a dad, so I guess
yes,
I'm not even on the list of people to call. But
exactly.
But no, call my mother. And often I found being straight with them, very straight with them. Not trying to rose color a situation, not trying to make a bad situation worse than it was.
Sure.
And that helped stabilize things. Over time, as a rabbi, people would ask me to officiate at their families' happy gatherings. But sometimes over time, as parents or grandparents grew older, I was asked to help comfort as clergy in the hospital, in different situations. And I found that my blend of medical knowledge as a communicator and as a clergy converged.
Sure.
And similar to yourself, where you're dealing a lot with systems and information, yet you've had this profound health journey that is, anybody who hears about it is like, holy mackerel, that's scary as hell.
Yeah.
And you take it as a matter of course. But for the listener, it's like, holy mackerel, that's scary as hell. And because I'd been in really desperate situations as a combat soldier, I'd seen terrible things. I'd seen people die. And so going into a hospital room or going into someone's home, I had a certain sense of spiritual strength.
Right.
And I could help them and their family. Now, palliative care is mysterious. We often attribute palliative care to, and hospice to, death.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too, could you maybe for our listeners break down what's the difference between palliative care, hospice?
I think it's a big difference. It does.
Yes.
When we're all dying.
Yes.
Just at a different, like our clocks are just paced at a different time.
Right.
But everybody has a ticking clock if we just don't know when. Palliative care is a commitment of the medical system to rally around, to use the best medical information and technology available to make a person's existence comfortable and workable. So it may very well mean that they're going out and about and shopping or playing cards, reading a great book or watching their favorite TV shows, all of that. It just means that the system has committed to provide them with the support system and treatment platform, make them viable, comfortable, engaged, and they may leave this world sooner or later. Nobody knows. Nobody knows when we're going to leave. Even someone who looks deathly ill can hold on sometimes for extended period of time, but they should be comfortable. They should be comfortable, and their family should be comfortable.
That's right. And prepare for that journey, right? I often say when I'm talking about this whole thing around aging and age tech is the day that you're born is the day that you start to age. And to your point, too, you never know when that last day on the earth is going to be. But at some point, we're all going to end up in the same place. So the question is, how do you want to live that life throughout, whether it's at the beginning as a young, strong, youthful person or towards the end as you hopefully more mature in your life and you recognize that there's less time or less, I like to say less summers left on this side than on the other side.
First of all, who has the courage to begin the conversation?
Yes.
And what the person who's ill often doesn't realize is that the loving family is never going to let go. No one's going to say, Dad, you look awful. Why don't we call it a day here? And sometimes the family does that. Sometimes the person who is ill has to initiate the conversation. Sometimes the doctor should, and sometimes actually visiting clergy can help. But what I've seen is consistently doctors are uncomfortable raising the conversation because it looks like they don't have confidence in themselves to pull a rabbit out of the hat. And the family doesn't want to say to their loved one, I think we've reached the end of the road, and really, you seem like you're not doing well now.
Right.
So the question is, we don't prepare ourselves to really figure out, how do we want to engage?
That's right.
We have what's called living wills. We have legal documents that guide the way. But in past era, actually people wrote a living letter to their family members. So what happens is that we once actually communicated our wishes in a very deep, profound spiritual way.
Right.
And that practice really isn't followed through as much right now. And probably it's an opportunity for people to start to think about, aside from my advance directive, my living will, maybe I need to write out something that sort of says, when this time comes, here's how I'd like us to engage in conversation about. We have a living will, but we actually need something deeper or profound that guides. Now, I've often found in the situation, in the huddle, that doctors unfortunately need to have courses, not just on the technology of medicine, but empathy around delivery of care.
That's right.
They often want to talk about like heart function, brain function, lung capacity, circulatory systems. They have to talk about people. And as a doctor in whether it's the ICU or the ER, it is horrible on them to lose a patient.
Oh, I can imagine. Absolutely.
It's horrible. For the family looks at the healer as a superhuman,
savior.
Savior. save them, save them.
Right.
That's the shortest prayer. Please heal her.
That's right.
Again, Jesus asks about his sister Miriam when she's ill. He says to God, please heal her. We think in those simple, quick, powerful terms.
Absolutely.
But often what I find is when you sit down with a family and you explain that in their decision-making, they're not decreeing life or death. They're actually saying, look, here's how my loved one would want to live.
That's right.
Not the method of death, but the
Exactly.
method of celebrating their life.
Yeah, I personally can appreciate that as well, too, just in two situations where one, my mom that was diagnosed with kidney cancer and it had metastasized, and she made a conscious decision that she did not want to go through chemotherapy. And we begged her to, please, Mom, fight. We want you here. We love you. My dad had just passed about 2 years right before that as well, too. And her response to us was, look, I had a good life. I have 50 years of marriage with your father. I raised 3 beautiful kids. I have grandkids. I've had a good life. I'm okay with allowing nature to take its course. And although we wanted her around, she, in her mind, had said, my journey is ending, and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to embrace that journey. And then with my brother-in-law, who had contracted COVID and ultimately ended up getting on a ventilator, he had a stroke and a heart attack and all of that during the process and was put on a ventilator. My sister said, my husband doesn't want to live like this. We talked about this. I know that he would not want to be in this condition for any length of time. And as much as we want to try to figure out, is there a way for him to survive? He will not have the quality of life that he wants. And so we made the conscious decision to turn off the respirator and be there with him when he passed. And the same with my mom. She was surrounded around family and friends when she took her last breath as well, too. And to your point, it is about if you have the choice and the opportunity to make the decision about how you want your transition to happen, we should, as your loved ones and care providers and others, should respect that and allow them to take the journey that they've chosen to take.
The theme, I think, of our conversation is the connected individual.
Right. Exactly.
And I think for your mother of blessed memory, she saw you, Christopher, and the family, and she felt that her legacy would continue. Loving relationship, loving with you and your family and with her late husband.
Right.
And she saw herself speak in the continuum of life, death, continuum.
Absolutely.
Of life.
And quite honestly, Gil, she had gotten into a condition where she didn't have a quality of life, that I myself came to that resolution and said, I don't want my mom to live like this. I would rather her go in peace than for her to continue to suffer as well, too. And so I think to some degree, hopefully we all get to that place where it's like, this is not the person I want to remember. I don't want them to be just surviving. I want them to live. And if their body is saying it's shutting down, I'm done, then allow the body to go and let the spirit survive.
Yeah. A great sage of more than 2,000 years ago was at a port, one of the ancient ports of Mediterranean, and he observed a ship going out to sea and the fanfare, people on the dock, the cheering, the music, the joviality of the whole experience. And then he stayed there after people had left, and he watched the ship coming back from a long journey, and he saw how nobody was there to greet it. And he reflected and he wrote, he said, isn't it interesting? This ship goes out, it's accomplished nothing. It's faced no storms, it's faced no adventure. And yet all these people cheer and celebrate its journey. And this other ship comes back after months of sea. Who knows what they've experienced? Storms, shoals, pirates, you name it. And they finish their journey in silence. And that's something when a child is born into this world, it's a celebratory moment. And when someone leaves this world, it's mournful. I would suggest that we mix it up a little bit. We celebrate both. We celebrate a life coming into existence, the potential of that life, and we celebrate the journey of an individual who's toiled, who's brought into the world love and connection and achievement and effort and struggle and sorrow. and learn to have moments of celebratory. When we cry, or we fear their loss, which is what holds us back on the palliative care decision and putting that in place, the fear of losing them, we have to get in touch with the fact that that fear is the fear of losing something that is incredibly precious to us.
Yeah.
And we know, and therefore we don't want to let it go.
Yeah.
The way we love it is let it go.
Yeah, I also think too, to some degree, Gil, is that it's also a recognition that our lives are finite as well too. When we see a friend or a loved one who has passed away, it starts, at least for me anyway, forces me to reflect, how much more time do I have on this plane? And because I don't know what the unknown is beyond this, there's a certain amount of fear. And yeah, I'm mourning the person's loss because I missed them, but also I think I'm reflecting on my own mortality in many ways as well too. And so it really is an interesting, I guess, dichotomy, for lack of a better term, of trying to really figure out.
We're
It's
in
very
complex.
complex. Yeah,
You know,
complex human being.
that's why we have to live each day in some regard as if it's our last.
That's right.
We have to throw ourselves into this existence and make a difference in the world. And
Absolutely.
that making a difference is what your mother felt. We cited, her 50 years of a loving relationship with your father. Mm-hmm. She cited the 3 children she brought into this world. She had a full life, a legacy, an impact. And I think of my grandmother, who at 93 said to me that she wanted to leave this world. She had suffered terribly. She had seen terrible things.
Right.
She had survived terrible things.
Sure.
But she was persistent and resilient. She had great love for her children and grandchildren. Right. They brought meaning to her life. And yet she had to signal to me, it's okay. I need to let go. Right. I need to let go. She needed to let go.
Exactly.
And we're not good at that.
No, we're not. We're not.
And that's good. That's really good. And it's really difficult when it comes to the topic we're talking about, palliative care.
Yeah.
It's difficult because it doesn't put anyone in a loving place where they can track with what is going on right now and say, how are you doing? What do you need? How can I help? How can I support you?
Absolutely. So that critical difference in palliative care versus hospice care can be given really at any point of the seriousness of the illness itself, versus hospice is really reserved for kind of the final stages.
In
correct
theory.
Me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. So expound on that.
Yeah. So palliative care is designed to make someone feel comfortable. Often is connected to either a sense of mobility or pain relief or mental health support. Sure. Hospice often requires the additive of medical support. And hospice doesn't mean you're trapped in your bed, like you've declined food, water, and medicine. Doesn't necessarily mean that. That's right. How you design the hospice care that you need so that you don't suffer. Some people are on hospice care for months, and then their situation shifts and they can say, I don't need you any longer. Right. I think I'm going to live for another few years. Right. But the reality is, if someone and their clinical team and their family feel that the end nears, why shouldn't they get the support that they need to live well and comfortable? That's right. And I think that's where our humanity has to be evaluated.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just on the next tech tool or tech toy we develop and deploy, or the next biologic we see approved by the Food and Drug Administration.
Sure.
It is also how we marshal resources and psychological support to help the individual and their family.
That's right. And I think the thing, too, that was very helpful for my family as we went through the hospice journey with my mom was that person sitting down and explaining to us the process of dying, what their body goes through when it starts to shut down, what that person is dealing with, so that we knew how to react to it appropriately. Because obviously we're going to try to do everything we can to save them because we still want them here. But the body is going through a process of shutting down very systematically, quite honestly. And I think for me, that was so helpful in understanding that, so I wouldn't overreact or misinterpret what was going on with my mom as she was going through those final stages as well.
I'm thinking, Christopher, of the famous book that parents or parents to be used to read, which is What to Expect When You're Expecting.
That's right. Yeah.
And nobody has published, maybe they have, I just haven't seen it yet, a book of what to expect when you're leaving this world.
When you're leaving. Yeah, I think that's a book for you, man.
Yeah, maybe we'll collaborate on that one together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But look, our humanity is being tested all the time. And it's not just of our struggle to sustain and save life. It's also the quality of which we say goodbye to life. The individual who feels strong and supported, and the family and friends around that person who need our support.
That's right.
And by the way, I'll just add, sometimes immediately after the passing of an individual, friends in the community rally to that family.
Yeah.
And for the days ahead, they're there. And then all of a sudden, like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months later, it's back to business, right?
That's right.
And that, like your mom after your father died, and aside from you and your family, people tend to forget that she's alone. People disappear from their lives.
Yes.
And they forget that person is still living in this world, like your mom is living in this world, though your father is left. And they're left to go on by themselves.
Right.
The highest level of palliative care is not the policies or approaches or tools that we use during the process itself. Let's always remember that humanity is the driving force.
That's right.
Caring is the driving force.
Exactly.
Empathy is the foundation of great care. So we could talk about technology and information and best practice. Let's always remember it's about heart and soul.
That
really creates the best journey to the end. And when people feel loved and supported and remembered, then they can leave this world with comfort, and those that they leave behind can be comforted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as we wrap this up, I would be remiss, since it's called Straight Outta Health IT, if we wouldn't touch a little bit on any impact or lack thereof. I'm open to either perspective you might have on, how technology may or may not be providing some level of support, help, management of someone that's going through these end-of-life phases and or their families. We see technology on the care side, and things like telemedicine and AI and things of that nature. I'm just curious from your perspective, have you seen the impact of technology in improving or providing some negative aspects to helping individuals deal with palliative, hospice, and end-of-life care?
I want to go back to what we were talking about just a second ago.
Right.
Some years ago, I came home and I said to my wife, I need to leave. I feel I need to get to the hospital to visit someone. And my wife, who's a psychologist, understood the language I was using, and she said, of course, go. And I got to the hospital, and as I got there, the family said to me, did the hospital call you? I said, no, I just sensed that I needed to appear. And they said, the husband said, my wife is transitioning from this world to the next. And as I got there, she passed, and I recited the prayers for someone who had just died.
Sure.
And the reason I bring this up is I think embedded in us is a technology we are losing touch with. And many years ago, you'll see people also had this technology, this sense of, you can call it sensory perception or just an inkling, whatever you want to term it. Animals,
intuition, whatever it might be, right?
Intuition. Animals have it, actually. I watch sometimes animals when another animal, a pet in the same household, dies, the other animal automatically feels that something has shifted in the energy flow of the house. So the reason I have to preface my comment on technology with that little sort of vignette is, again, the greatest technology, the greatest human technology is the human spirit.
Yes, it is.
And let's not let our creations, innovations, take precedence over our feelings.
Absolutely.
With technology itself, of course, there's, I think of the simple wearable or the monitoring tools that exist in terms of palliative care, and even pumps that are more humane, allow the person who's in pain to control the application of pain medication. These are all critical tools in the art of palliative care. And I say art, not science of palliative care. I think life requires as much spiritual mastery as it does technological whiz-bang innovation. So yes, technology plays a role. Yes, information plays a role. Yes, I think the two have to be combined.
Absolutely.
Let me end this by asking you a question, if I may. You're
Sure.
a feeling sensing person. You're a person who has been...
Some might challenge that, but
you are, and
Jake.
you know it. And also your life journey has heightened your sensitivities around health and well-being and
absolutely.
family and friends and all of this. What plays a greater role in your decision-making process? Your mastery of technology and information, or your life experience and your connection to other people?
No, absolutely. Life experience and connection to other people absolutely trumps everything, especially now that I've going through this next experience in life and being now a grandfather as well. So seeing...
Congratulations on that one.
Well, thank you. And seeing the next generation. And I can almost understand where my mom was at now, because now I know our family will continue. It won't just be left with my two boys and my sister's kids. I have now another legacy that will carry on long after I'm gone, God willing. And for me, that's...
Christopher, your mother speaking to you right now from above.
Yes.
Just saying, Christopher, don't worry. You've got a lot of years ahead of you.
Yes.
When the time does come, 50, 60 years from now,
right,
just remember the journey continues. Your genes are here on planet Earth.
That's right.
They'll still be doing great things.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think for me, that's so comforting as well, too, to know that will happen. And so, I think the human connection absolutely is extremely important. I'm a techie person by nature as well, too, but I understand it's just a tool. But ultimately, it is those experiences and relationships that you build with someone that carries you through your entire life. Those are the things you reflect on. I don't think about the last cell phone I had, or laptop or computer, but I do think about the relationships of people who crossed my life and those who may no longer be here, and the impact that they have had on this journey as well, too. And so appreciate that, you pointing that out and making me to some degree reflect that as well. You and I could talk for hours about...
You and I could.
That's right, multiple topics, and you'll be back on and we'll cover some more as well, too. But I do want to give you the final thought. And as we close out today, and thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me, what advice would you give family members who are having to face this challenge with our friends, who are having to face this challenge with people that they care about as they manage their journeys towards this end of life?
Yeah. So the best thing I could say is, first of all, if needed, of course, speak to a skilled therapist, a psychologist, or social worker, or clergy. You don't have to make these decisions by yourself. So if necessary, of course, reach out and get the help that you need. That's first and foremost, because these are emotional decisions. There is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. The question is always to live going forward with confidence and without regret.
Yes.
And to put yourself in a situation that's the case. Understand that your feelings are as valid as a physician's sort of clinical assessment of a situation. And that if physicians were able to really, with clarity, see the end of days, they too would, of course, be shaking in their boots about their own end of days.
Absolutely.
And obviously, we would be treating them as soothsayers and not as clinicians. As medicine becomes more specialized and doctors focus on not just cardiovascular systems, but they only focus on valves or upper esophageal disorders or whatever, they actually will be losing that Marcus Welby-like approach, traveling with you through your life. And therefore, your life and your end of life now returns to you, to each of us.
Yes.
The job is to live a good life, to feel that you're living your dreams.
Yes.
And like your mother, I think, Christopher, who is probably the best example we could share on this call, when your days come to a close, to feel the love of your family, and that love continues through your family to generations to come. My advice is to be kind, to be caring, to be loving. Don't get so enamored with information and technology. They're less accurate than our heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would finally say respect a person's decision on how they want to move
Well
on.
said.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Well, thank you so much, Gil Bashe, Chair of Global Health and Purpose for Finn Partners, for taking
Perhaps
time.
just Gil Bashe, human being.
I like that even better. Gil Bashe, human being. Thank you so much for taking time to have this conversation with me. I really appreciate you and your friendship, and look forward to having future discussions about life together.
Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. That's it, everyone. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen in. As always, your feedback and comments are always welcome. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe. And more importantly, please share this with others, friends, families, colleagues, even people you don't like. We can all experience and appreciate someone else's opinion. With that said, take care and then see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to Straight Outta Health IT. We hope you enjoyed today's guest. For more unfiltered dialogue of healthcare leaders and influencers, be sure to tune in next week. For the show notes, transcripts, and resources, please visit Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. We invite you to give us feedback by reaching out to Christopher Kunney on LinkedIn, just searching for Straight Outta Health IT, and you'll find us. We are constantly having live discussions about diverse topics in the industry.